Good evening, everyone. Those who are listening in and will be listening in on our YouTube channel later. This is Charles with the Exodus Logistics Learning Center, America's #1 dispatcher and freight broker training for beginners. Tonight is Tuesday, the 11th of March, 2025. It's 6 p.m. and this is our Freight Broker 101 training for beginners. The start of our second week of our Zoom trainings. We have live Zoom trainings every second and fourth week of each month. This is the second week in March. And in those weeks, second and fourth week, they are on Tuesdays and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. On our calendar here, I placed the calendar on the calendar page. So you can see outside of the portal, for those who don't have access, who will be listening on my YouTube channel, this is how you access it. But those of you who are members who have access to our main portal, it is also in the portal if you need to go to the calendar, the Zoom schedule right here. It takes you to the same page. So those who don't have access, you go through the Freight Broker Zoom calendar, and those who do, through the portal. Okay. So I was in the middle of a conversation with Mrs. Arnold about strategizing, starting the brokerage, getting the assets, talking about the areas to go to for a specific equipment type. So, Miss Arnold, can you unmute yourself again?
Yes.
There you go. Okay. So we were discussing, well, you said you had some questions too, so we'll come back to that, but let's see what other questions you may have.
With the freight brokering, because I plan to start, a company. Um, and I also want to do the trucking. I wanted to know as far as and I kind of was studying the prerequisites section about how to do the DBA, doing business as, and then also like I know you can have it under your LLC, but I know you want to keep both of them separate, but I want to know like how do I go about doing those things.
Okay, so under prerequisites, so let's bring up let me share a whiteboard so I can illustrate. Have you started your um, company yet, your business? Have you created your company?
No.
Okay. When you do, what will be the name of it? Just so I can, or uh, have you decided on the name of your brokerage?
Yes. I was looking at Precious Cargo.
Precious Cargo. So here is, you said have a DBA, so you're trying to put both the trucking and the brokerage under the same entity. That what you're saying?
Um,
It
yes, but I saw that it wasn't really a
wasn't
good
registered.
idea. So,
So here's what most people think about doing. They'll think about creating a parent company. Can you see my whiteboard, me drawing?
yes.
Okay. So they'll have a parent company or a parent entity, EIN, and it could be an LLC, limited liability company, right? And
Hmm.
they'll call it, they'll name it something. Let's just say, for example, XYZ or ABC, but they'll say logistics. Okay.
Hmm.
That's the parent company. You can have DBAs under that, doing business as, or what we call an alias, right? Or what some states call it a fictitious name. Okay. You can have XYZ freight brokerage or
Hmm.
brokerage, or however you want to call it. I'm just going to shorthand it. You know what I'm writing, right? Freight brokerage.
Uh-huh.
And you can have XYZ either transportation or trucking. I'll put trucking because transportation is kind of a little bit broad. So now you got under one entity a brokerage authority and a trucking authority. This is
Hmm.
going to be a conflict for
Okay.
several reasons, but the main reason is the insurance piece. No insurance company, to my knowledge, will do a policy for both the brokerage and the trucking side. They would have to be separate entities, separate LLCs,
Okay.
you see, because it's a conflict of interest and other things,
Hmm.
liability purposes and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So the logical thing, or well, I shouldn't say it like that. Another option would be to have separate, and let me erase this. Create, you can have it under the same, you can have it under the same name as far as the same name as theme is concerned, but um let's stick with the XYZ factor. You can say um XYZ, and I'll put FB as freight brokerage, okay?
Mhm.
So XYZ freight brokerage, it has its own EIN or entity identifier, and it could be the LLC. That's the legal structure of it. And then you can have XYZ, let's say trucking as opposed to transportation. Okay, kind of get very specific because it's a trucking company. It's an owner operator, and it has its own EIN, and the legal structure is an LLC. Now, there's different legal structures. There is a sole proprietor. There's a partnership. There's an LLC, S corp, C corp, what have you, right?
Mhm.
Um, so they're separate now, so they're protected. They're together, but in the same sense, they're also mutually exclusive of one another. In other words, there's nothing that ties these two together because they're not under the same entity or same EIN, but it's under your XYZ name, XYZ Freight Brokerage, XYZ Trucking, right? Or you can say ABC, whatever you call it. I'm just using that as an example. Okay. So this better protects the companies, both the brokerage and the trucking, that they're separate like this, as opposed to them being together under a parent EIN and their DBAs under that, because that can present a problem, okay, for liability purposes, insurance, and things like that. So it's probably best to keep them separate like this. All right. Okay. Hey, Mr. Ellis, how are you?
Yep.
All right, how's it going, boss?
All right. I'm gonna change your name to.
Actually, I was gonna change it. So I
I,
just
I got it. I got it.
because I log on a couple different devices. When I leave, I put it on my other phone. So this is on the iPad right now. But
Yeah, I just changed it.
okay.
And so we were talking about prerequisites right here. So, are we good, Mrs. Arnold there?
Yes, we're good. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions you have? You said you had some questions. Other questions?
I'll chime in along the way. I can't think of it right now. I should have
Okay,
wrote it down.
that's okay. So we were discussing also, Miss Arnold and I, prior to the recording started, um, certain equipment types for brokers in certain areas of the country where brokers can focus on getting customers that they know that require those equipment types. Equipment types being dry vans, flatbeds, and reefers, right? So for a dry van, I'm gonna put DV, flatbed, FB, and reefer, REEF. If you have if you have capacity or your equipment, let's go with Mrs. Arnold's one here and say flatbed. Well, we know that flatbed freight runs a lot in the southeast area, the Panhandle, the Floridas, the Georgias, things like, and maybe Texas a little bit. Um, a sprinkle of it in the Midwest. So knowing stuff like that, then it would as a broker, you say, well, let me target customers and shippers who are either based in those areas, or if they're not based in those areas, in other words, the company's physical building structure is in those areas, that'd be good. But also, if they're not, at least the lanes that they run their freight in runs through these areas. Okay. that would be, as a broker, that would be your mindset to think about. Well, let me get customers who run the lanes in that area for a drive-in, flatbed, or reefer, right? Drive-in is more, actually, drive-ins everywhere pretty much. Drive-ins are Midwest, Southeast, Southwest, Northeast. They're all over the place, okay? And then reefers are more in refrigerated parts of the country well, I should say, where shippers produce refrigerated goods, like the Midwest, like the Wisconsin, cheese in Wisconsin, and things like that. So Midwest, Southeast, Southwest, and even Northeast, you got refrigerated goods coming out of them. So these are things that you would have to, and of course, in this class, as we discuss it further, of course, we're going to enlighten you on that as well. So, um, so that's some of the things you would think about too as a broker. Now, Mrs. Arnold was speaking about prerequisites, business business plan. I know there was in the back office there's a business plan. It speaks about the business plan. Um, I don't want to say it's not important, but I wouldn't. Business plan is something that you plan out through the life of your company. It's not something you have to be pressed to create right now. Because as you evolve in life or your company evolves in life, so too should your business plan, right? So it's just an outline of your company, right? And you add to and take away as you go, okay? As far as the business plan is concerned. Let's go back to that prerequisites on the screen here. So right, business plan. So because you're going to write out your own executive summary, company description, things like that. I don't want to harbor too much on the business plan. It's structured for you to the template is here for you to add to and take away. We are in the business of services. So under number 3, it's not a product, it's a service. We provide a service. We arrange for the transportation of the freight. Okay. Market analysis, things like that. That's stuff like that. So business name we just discussed. It's kind of important. And then the legal structure. Remember, sole prop, LLC, S corp, things like that. So, your EIN is from your irs.gov. Once you name the company, create a legal structure, then you go to the irs.gov website, and then they will ask you for that, and they'll give you a random 9-digit identifier. Okay. Of course, your business account, business bank account, and other things too. Okay. Um, so that's that for the prerequisites. The important piece in the modules is the second module, which is the actual requirements to be a broker. Okay. What are you required? Now, have you been through this one yet, Mrs. Arnold?
Yes.
Okay. So the requirements, the minimum requirements, of course, now I get very detailed with it, but as long as you meet the minimum requirements with the governing body of brokering, which is the FMCSA, um, pop quiz, what does FMCSA stand for? Anyone? I know probably Mr. Ellis probably know it because he's in that process. Any what? FMCSA. I'm gonna say it like that. FMCSA. Right.
Federal Motor Carrier Safe.
Safety.
Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration.
There you go. Ding, 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 ding. And the apple goes to the gold star. Mrs. Arnold gets the gold star. Yeah, so Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. So it's a federal government entity that regulates transportation industry. MC part is for motor carriers and also freight brokers, but motor carrier. And the biggest letter in that is the S because this industry is very big on safety, right? And of course, administration. So Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. That's why there's so many requirements for the carriers to have an authority. That's why there's requirements for the brokers to have an authority because they're big on safety. So the FMCSA gives a broker authority to the freight broker in the form of a broker license. Okay. They give the FMCSA gives an authority to the motor carrier, the truck driver, the owner operator, in the form of a uh, certificate. Okay, so the motor carriers have a certificate and the brokers have a license. All right, that's the difference. So when you're looking at the FMCSA letter that someone may show you, if it says certificate on it, that's a motor carrier authority. If it says license, that's a broker authority. That's how you can tell the difference. So you can't be fooled by that because unless someone goes in there and redact the information or try to change it, white it out and try to change it. So, but the first requirement for you as a broker is to actually let the FMCSA know that you want to be a broker. And that's the application process, the OP1 form. You have to go in there and fill that out, introducing yourself and letting them know you want to be a broker. That is a $300 non-refundable process. Okay, you go to the fmcsa.dot.gov/registration site. Have you been there? Have you had an opportunity, Mrs. Arnold, to look at the FMCSA's website?
No.
Okay, well, let's do that. We could either if you don't know it, and you can just go to Google, obviously, that's free, and you just type in FMCSA. And the first one that pops up, right? You can do portal login, but I'm going to just do FMCSA. And going to take me to the general one, fmcsa.dot.gov. Okay. This is the generic. This is the site right here. Once you get to this page, you are at the main, and I'm gonna copy and paste the link there. Okay. This is the starting point. Under registration, right, you got all these different headers about FMCSA regulations, registration, CDL, safety, research, and news. Under registration, you want to select apply for a new USDOT and or authority. Okay, right there. And it takes you to a new, what's called a URS system, Unified Registration System.
Can you give me some ice in the soda, please?
Sorry about that. Let me mute that person. This is the location to get started. Now, prior to this page, they didn't have a login.gov. They're switching over to the login.gov concept. Before, you just had a URS system and you got started going in there and creating a username and password. But now you have to create a login.gov, which is that's not a problem. It's just an extra step for security purposes. It's not a big deal, right? So you go in there and create that. And then once you go in there, it takes you to the OP1 application or the OP1 form, the digital form. I'm going to go to the OP1 application on the website right here in the PDF right here. So this is the OP1 form, which is the application for a motor property carrier and broker authority. So it serves two purposes. If a person wants to apply for an authority as a truck driver, that's the motor property carrier. If they want to apply for an authority as a broker, they in other words, they fill out the same form. Okay. So I would suggest and advise, I need to replace this, by the way, because it's a year old now, almost a year old, with the updated ones, 31st of 2024. But I would suggest it's only 16 pages to read through this, to educate yourself on what the FMCSA is trying to come across to those applicants who are applying for the authority, what the cost is, things like that. This is your first starting point. Here's the flow chart or the process of how it goes. The applicant submits the OP1, which is this one, the OP1P. P is stands for passenger. You may apply for an authority as a passenger authority. In other words, if you want to drive limousines or charter buses and things like that, you have to have a passenger authority because you're hauling people. That's what that means. Okay. That's not us. I'm just letting you know what it is. And then the OP1 form FF, that's someone who applies for what's called a freight forwarder, someone who deals with importing and exporting. That's not us. We are the OP1, the regular form. Okay. That's step one. Step two, the applicant receives an MC or an FF number, depending on which one they applied for. If you apply for a broker authority, you're going to get what's called a grant letter, and you're going to receive an MC and a DOT number. It's not going to be active yet, but you're going to receive, that's the number you're going to expect to receive or have once it does become active. You have to do other things in order for that number to become active. Okay. But you filled out the application in step one, you paid the $300 non-refundable fee, and you moved on to step two. Got um, the MC number. Step three is it's usually not a big deal because the reason why there is a step three, a 10-day protest period, because when you apply for your authority, your information is entered into the FMCSA's register database. It's public information. So anyone can see it and say, hey man, Mrs. Arnold, I don't think she should be a broker. I don't think she's qualified. And they can protest that. And there's a 10-day period for that. Does that happen a lot? No. Why is it there? I have no idea. But it is what it is, right? People protest. They can be jealous. Oh, this is my baby daddy. I don't think he should be a broker because he don't even take care of his kids, or whatever the reason is, right? So, um, that'll come and go. If let's say let's use the worst case scenario. If there is a valid or validity to someone protesting the fact that someone shouldn't be a broker, the FMCSA will investigate that and see what the reason is. If the reason is valid enough, then they'll circle back to the person, the applicant, and say, well, someone protested it and it turns out that you such, and such, right? Whatever, right? And they'll have to rectify whatever it is before they continue. But that's like a 99.9999% chance that that will not happen. So, step four, insurance company files forms with the FMCSA. What does this mean? So the application is the first step. The second step is, as a broker, you need to have the insurance. Here is what they're referring to, is in the form of what they call a bond. Every freight broker needs to have a bond, either a surety bond or a trust fund type. The bond type comes in two forms: a surety bond. Surety bonds are credit based. Trust funds are asset based. Okay, so most people leverage their credit to get a good rate for a surety bond, then utilizing assets to leverage for a trust fund bond type. That's the most common method, the way to go. Okay, the surety bond. Um, the surety bond amount has to be, well, right now it's $75,000. All that means is, think of an insurance policy. You have to have $75,000 coverage, but you only pay a certain premium for that coverage. Okay. And if your credit is, the better your credit, the lower the premium. You pay it once a year, you renew it every year. Okay. So you select a specific surety bond company. The bond company, once you qualify for the bond with that bond company, the bond company is responsible for filing the right form to the FMCSA, letting them know that you met their requirements. Okay, I want to make sure you understand that. It's not the applicant who files the form to the FMCSA, it's the bond company. They recognize bond companies. Okay. If you do a surety bond, the form is called the BMC 84. If you do a trust fund, the form is called the BMC 85. Okay. Are there any questions? It looks like Miss Arnold, like you taking notes.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, Vancia. Yes.
How you doing? Two things. One, how do we get to where we at right now? And two, what's the payment difference between the bond and the did you say surety insurance or something? What's the difference? It's like, how do I know how you go about getting a regular bond, but how do you go about getting, if you choose the other step.
So what other step are you referring to?
The you said you can either get a surety bond or a
Or a trust fund.
yeah, trust fund is the word.
Both of them are bond are a type of bond. One is credit based and the easiest one to apply for because everybody just leverage. If you got good credit, then you can leverage your credit to get a lower rate for that $75,000 bond coverage. Most people don't do the trust fund because a lot of people don't happen to have, unless you got happen to have $75,000 in an escrow account laying around, and you say I could just leverage that and use it. Most people don't have $75,000 in escrow, so they'll leverage the credit side and get the bond that way. Mr. Ellis.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I don't know, and it also depends on the company too, because before I got my authority, I used my annuity statement, and they declined it, and I'm like, oh, look at the anyway. But yeah, but I guess it just depends on the
How much
underwriter.
how much equity was in your annuity, if you don't mind me asking?
1.9.
Well, they should have gave it to you. You got way more than enough.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the thing is, I'm like, why would they decline? I said, that's
Or maybe annuities is not a category that they would allow to be eligible for a trust fund, that particular bond company. Maybe they may just want cash. They may not want the annuity. I mean, but
but that's what
you could
but
easily cash out an annuity though. That's not a problem.
that's what I'm saying. I mean, I'm like, you purchase the annuity. You have to, whatever you put in it is what you have, which didn't make any sense at all to me. But I mean,
Right.
it's just food for thought, going forward. So not everything would actually be able to be leveraged. Like you said, you can leverage your credit, but I mean, as far as assets go, I use it as assets. I'm like, look, I mean, it's like that's liquid. What are they talking about?
Right. Right.
And they declined it. But
One
that's my luck in life though too.
point 1.9 M's.
It was crazy.
Yeah. So to answer the second part of Vancia's question, we said, where do we go to get this? This is under Module 2, Vancia, broker requirements. And at the top, the OP1 number 3.
Okay.
You click that and it takes you down to here. It takes you down to the PDF. And I just clicked the OP1 PDF and it opened up the actual OP1 form.
Okay.
And I'm just reading through the OP1 form saying, hey, let's do this. So okay. So where were we? Oh, the bond. So the bond, so the applicant, you guys who are going to eventually apply for your broker license or your broker authority, do not file the form to the FMCSA. That would be a conflict of interest. The bond company that represents you or that you hired for your bond files the correct form. If it's a surety bond, it is the BMC-84. If it's the trust fund, it is the BMC-85. Okay. So that's and the purpose, what's the purpose of the bond? Let's answer that question. What's the purpose of the bond? The bond, from a broker's perspective, it protects the carrier, the motor carrier. That's the reason why brokers are required to have a bond because they run the risk of not protecting the carrier, not satisfying the carrier, the person that they hired to transport their customers' freight, the shipper's freight. So, as a protection for that carrier, brokers are required to carry a bond in the amount of $75,000 in case brokers breach the contract. They don't pay according to the net terms. They do something outside of the broker carrier agreement. Anything that breaches the contract between you, the broker, and the motor carrier with which you onboarded to your brokerage to move that freight for your customer. If you do anything that's unethical, illegal, immoral, or you just breach the contract, the bond steps in and protects the carrier from that. That is the reason why a bond is required. Okay? Just so you know. I don't know, did you guys know that? But that's the reason. Okay, Mrs. Arnold shaking her head. Okay, good. Okay. So that's the now can you have extra insurance? Let's stay on step 4 for a second. Can you have extra insurance? Yes, you can. If you have the budget, the expense to have extra insurance, as a broker, this is going to help you look good or great in the eyes of the customer, of the shipper, if you carry extra insurance. An example or two examples of extra insurance that we normally talk about is contingent cargo, CCI, contingent cargo insurance, or E&O, errors and omissions. Those are the two basic. There are other ones, but CCI, contingent cargo, is contingent upon the carrier's cargo coverage. When you onboard or approve a carrier under your brokerage, you require them to have, number one, a motor carrier authority because they have to be able to have the authority to transport your customers' goods. Number one. Number two, they have to be a business. They have to have a W-9. They have to be a company, right? With an EIN. And then number three, they have to carry insurance to cover what they have the authority to transport. Does that make sense? So the insurance, the types on the policy that the motor carriers carry are the two important ones are cargo and liability. Generally, most motor carriers carry 100,000 cargo coverage on the policy, and liability they carry minimum 1 million. Now, commercial insurance carriers providers only require 750,000, but most motor carriers can't, they have 1 million because they feel, okay, well, brokers are going to require 1 million, so why I might as well just up it to 1 million. It just makes sense, right? So these two extra things that the carriers have, if a broker gets contingent cargo, that means that their 100,000, 250,000 contingent cargo will be on top of the carrier's 100,000 cargo. So let's say the value of the goods that's being transported is, I don't know, $90,000, right? And let's say the carrier, God forbid, have an accident and damages the whole shipment, the whole truckload, right? So that's $90,000 down the drain. So their insurance is gone, or it's cut. Their insurance has to cover that. They have 100,000, they covered it up to 90, so they got 10,000 left. But let's say there was some extra damage too that went to like an extra 20,000. Well, your contingent kicks in and kind of covers that too. So it's contingent upon the carrier. So the carrier's cargo insurance gets used up first. And if you carry contingent cargo, you can step in and provide support as well. And this looks good in the eyes of the shipper because it tells the shipper, the customer, say, hey, this broker, he requires the carrier to have 100,000, but he also is carrying, although he's not required to, he's also carrying contingent cargo to show me, the customer, that he wants to protect my shipment, my goods, while or my customer's goods, because I'm a shipper. I'm shipping goods to my customer. My finished products are being shipped to my customer. This broker is making sure that that gets done correctly and the goods are covered and protected. So that's contingent cargo. The second extra coverage is what's called E&O, errors and omissions. Most new brokers make mistakes, right? Or you try not to, but every now and then you slip up. Until you start doing things repetitively, you're gonna slip up. What do I mean by that? You get a customer as a broker. Let's say On Point Logistics gets a customer as a broker, and they do flatbed shipments. They require thus and so. One of the thus and so's that they require is the load has to be chained, bound, strapped, tarped, pipe stake, dunnage, all those things. And the shipper expressed this in the load tender when they gave it to On Point Logistics in the paperwork. When the shipper tenders freight to a broker, it itemizes what's required. That's what load tenders are. And the broker decides whether they accept or reject the load tender and also the rate and things like that. So let's say, for example, On Point Logistics accepted that load tender, but overlooked a few requirements. So she gets a carrier on the shipment going from, let's say, Savannah, let's say Charleston, South Carolina, down to Baton Rouge, Louisiana for uh, a flatbed shipment that requires chains and binders, and tarp, right? On Point Logistics, I hate to put you on the spot, On Point Logistics, but On Point Logistics neglected, unbeknownst to her for whatever reason, to tell the carrier in the rate con or in the conversation with the carrier during the onboarding process that the shipment needs to be tarped. Now, a good carrier is always going to ask, especially a flatbed load, hey man, is this tarp or no tarp? That should have jarred On Point's memory right there. Oh yeah, by the way, it is tarp. I'm looking at the load tender. Yeah, the customer requires it to be tarp. But if it's a new carrier and they don't ask questions like that, let's say they're green and On Point gives them a rate con, but it doesn't say that the shipment needs to be tarp. So the carrier gets to the pickup location, gets loaded, chains and binds the freight, but doesn't tarp it. So the customer should have caught that, first of all, before that carrier left. They should have said, wait a minute, our shipment's supposed to be tarped. But let's say a person that loaded them ignored. So it got transported to the receiver to be delivered. Guess what's going to happen at the receiver? Can anybody guess what's going to happen at the receiving location?
They're going to refuse the load.
I'm saying they're going to reject the load, probably.
They're going to reject the load because they are the customer. They're the receiver. So they're the ones who told your customer how they want that product brought to them because they're purchasing the product, right? Customers ship to other customers who are paying for your customer's shipment. They're requiring certain things. So when they get something that doesn't meet their requirement, guess what they're going to do? They're going to reject it. So they're going to say, we're going to reject this load, and we may even file a claim. We're not gonna sign it off, take it back. We don't want it. Don't even offload the truck. We don't want it because we require that this load needed to be tarped. So in that situation, let's think that through for a minute. What should be done? What should be the next steps? You guys think as brokers, what would you think? You got E&O, of course. You got errors and omissions. So who does the blame fall on?
The broker, because they didn't put it on the rate con.
Okay.
And really the dispatcher, because the dispatcher should have asked those questions as well. But,
Well, what if it wasn't a dispatch load? What if the owner operator dispatched their own freight and got it from you, the broker, without having a dispatcher? Because you got some owner operators who don't have dispatchers.
Well, it can go two ways, but it still relies on the broker because the broker didn't require it. The shipper is moving the load for the broker. So the broker incorrectly did the rate con and didn't notify the shipper of the requirements for the receiver.
Okay. I'll. Does everybody agree with Vancia?
Well, I have a quick question though. Now,
before you ask the question, I'm gonna put this out there in the air, and then I'll let you ask your question, Ellis. Is the carrier in any way, shape, or form at fault?
No, not if you followed the rate con.
Mr. Ellis said yes. Mr. Ellis said yes.
No, I said no.
Okay. So you guys don't think and I shouldn't say it that way because my tone is suggesting that he is, but you guys don't think that the carrier is at fault in any way for this particular shipment that got rejected at the receiver because it wasn't tarped, right? Everybody says no.
No, as long as he wasn't notified or as long as it wasn't on the documentation, I don't think he's responsible for that.
Okay.
I think a little bit of the responsibility is on him. And that's where his insurance comes in at. Because as a flatbed driver, most loads have to be tarped.
most loads, but there are exceptions. There are some non-tarped loads.
Well, well now I have another question. Doesn't it depend on the time of year? Now, if it's summertime and it's blazing hot, now depending on what that particular product
It depends on
is,
the commodity.
So I'm
right?
gonna say this:
Yeah,
the commodity is relevant, but the season is irrelevant in this scenario
right,
because if the instruction says this, but it gets ignored, it doesn't matter
right,
what season it's in,
right, right.
right? So, but to answer the question, no, the carrier is at not at fault.
Mm-mm.
Now the carrier could have been more responsible, but technically it's not the carrier's fault.
Right.
Mhm.
Like,
Now, is it likely that just, based upon the carrier's experience, let's say he's, 20 plus years experience and he's had situations like that before where, something wasn't followed on the order, just his own instinct and experience would just kind of have him ask the question, hey, should this be tarped? You
exactly,
know, because
exactly.
you have a line of communication with your dispatcher or whomever you're getting the load from, whether it's your dispatcher or if he's doing it himself, he should ask that question just to be on the safe side, because also what that says to, the shipper is that this person obviously has some experience and they can catch things that maybe they may have just overlooked just by accident.
That's why I said, but that's why he threw in that because I agree with you, and I said it was the dispatcher should have should have asked more questions, but he turned around and threw that twist and said the carrier booked his own load.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But so the rate con is key and the experienced carrier is key. So let's say I'm the truck driver and I got 20 years experience and I get a rate con and it doesn't have on it that the shipment should be tarped. But the shipper requires it to be tarped. So I'm reading the rate con and say, oh, it shouldn't be tarped. So I'm thinking, okay, but I recognize certain commodities and I know certain commodities should be tarped because it's common sense to me as an
Right.
experienced carrier. So I'm going to ask at the shipping facility, hey man, this is such and such type of commodity. Shouldn't it be tarped? And they're gonna be like, yeah, it should be tarped with it because they're the shipper. They're required to be tarped because their customer, the receiver that's buying the product, requires it to be tarped. So they're gonna catch it right there before it leaves the facility. So
Right. So, I mean, even as the broker or whomever, everybody who has any type of connection or the communication with whomever should just, I mean, if it's not on the order, but just knowing the commodity helps big time, of course, obviously. So, like you said, since you know the commodity, you naturally think to ask if it's not on the order form that, hey, shouldn't this be tarped? Because
so
there
that
may be a
so the
reason that they may not want it tarped for some reason.
right. So the important point in all of this exercise here is communication is key, right? Everybody needs to be on the same page. The broker, now, from your perspective, the important point is from you guys' perspective, the broker is to make sure that all your I's are dotted, your T's are crossed, all the requirements of your customer need to be met before that truck leaves that facility
Mhm.
to avoid. So that one little extra 5 or 10 minutes to make sure everything is how it's supposed to be can save a lifetime of anguish at the other end on the receiver side. You see? And it could prevent any claims being filed against your bond as a broker or any rejected shipments at the receiver side at the fault of the broker. Okay. So these are little things, and sometimes they're overlooked. I mean, not sometimes unintentionally, but that extra step can save a headache down the line. That's what I'm saying.
And now, but also, just a quick thought. Now, again, before it's actually even picked up, as it's loaded, waiting to be picked up, before it leaves its origin, shouldn't they already know that?
Right. So here, I'll do you one better. Let's go all the way to the beginning. You, the broker, having a conversation with the customer, and you get that customer, you bid on it, you win the bid, you win it, and they send you the load tender. The load tender contains it's an itemized manifest of the requirements of that shipment. And it says that it should be tarped. So now when you take that tender and create a rate confirmation through your TMS system, the same instructions on the tender should also be on the rate. The only difference between a load tender and a rate confirmation is the deduction of your margin, like as a broker. So let's say you charge 20% as to for every shipment that you broker. You charge a 20% margin or profit margin. What I mean by, so when I say margin, I mean profit margin. You stand to make, because you're not doing this for free. You're a broker. You're trying to make, that's how you make money. So you get a $3,000 load tender from the shipper. You charge 20%. So you stand to make what? 20% of 3,000, $600,
600.
right? So deduct the 600 from the load tender. That's going to be what? Left over 24, right? 600 from 3,000 is 2,400, right? So let's say the market is at 24. Let's say you posted it at the difference, the 2,400. So now everything else is the same. So the instructions or the requirements of the shipper, the customer, should be in the special notes or special instructions on the Raycom for the carrier to see. And also, as a broker, you need to tell them when you're on the phone, hey man, I'm sending you Raycom. Be mindful of the special instructions that you follow. Make sure everything is tarp. 30 seconds. Tarp, all everything's met before you leave. Matter of fact, give me a call before you, once you're done being loaded, give me a call. This is a broker telling the carrier. Give me a call before you leave. I want to verify some stuff before you pull off the dock. Something as simple as that can prevent a lot of stuff too, you see. So it's the little things sometimes that can be important in the long run over time, right? Um, so we were talking about number four, insurance, step four. Step five in the broker required. Well, before I move on, are we everybody okay about step four, the insurance and the bond and things like that? That's a requirement for the broker.
I had a question about that.
Okay.
Um, you had two different kinds of insurances, and I didn't catch the second one. You said
So
contingent,
so
and what
the
else?
so the two different kinds of insurance, though they're not requirement. Those are supplemental in addition to your bond.
Supplemental.
Your bond is the main insurance you need to carry as a broker. That $75,000 bond, that is insurance. That protects the carrier. But the other two are extra supplemental coverages if you have the budget and it can afford to have it and it looks good in the eyes of the shipper. The first one is the contingent cargo, CCI, contingent cargo insurance. And the second one is E&O, errors and omissions. So that protects you if you got insurance coverage, if you make an error or if you omit something from the paperwork.
Errors and emissions?
Errors and omissions, E&O.
Omissions. Emissions like a car, huh? Errors and
Oh,
omissions.
omission. Oh,
I know.
yeah.
Omissions.
Yep.
And what was the acronym you just said?
E&O.
Yeah, E&O.
Yeah, E&O and CCI, contingent cargo insurance, and E&O, errors and omissions.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And now step five is a requirement. Every broker needs to have designated an agent of process. So it's kind of like it's a caveat of step four, the supplemental insurance. If someone files a claim against your bond, there has to be someone to serve that claim to you. That is a process. That is an agent of process. You have to designate an agent of process for your brokerage. And every agent of process company has representatives in all 50 states. So you can select one agent of process company that has the best rate. They're usually like between $75, $76 to $100. It's pretty competitive. They're pretty saturated. They're pretty competitive. So you just choose the best one or the best price, pretty much, because they do all the same thing. Here's an example of how it works. The agent of process. Let's go back to that one example that we delivered that load, that flatbed load that wasn't tarp. It got rejected. The receiver decided to file a claim because there was some damage to the commodity that wasn't tarped. That was the reason why it should have been tarped so it wouldn't get damaged. But there was some damage to it, not necessarily the whole shipment, but let's say half the shipment was damaged. Let's say 13 out of the 26 pallets were damaged, right? So the shipper, I'm sorry, the receiver, the consignee, the receiver, says we reject it, you can take it back, and we're going to file a claim against the bond of the broker because we found out it was the fault of the broker. They neglected to tell the carrier. It wasn't the carrier's fault, so they're not going to file a claim against the insurance of the carrier. They're going to file a claim against the bond of the broker. Okay. So they start the process. They contact um, the bond company of the broker. Say we're going to file a claim against the bond for this reason, such and such and the. So an agent, a process agent at the location of the bond company that the consignee or the receiver contacted will now find out where's the brokerage is based, what state. Let's say they're based in Texas. So they reach out to the Texas uh, representative and say, hey, we got this paperwork. We're going to fax it to you that a claim is being filed against the bond of XYZ brokerage. And then it's going to get served to the brokerage at their particular location. So it goes from the source of where it generated to the destination of where it needs to be received for it to be in effect. And then as a broker, when you meet the designation of agent of process requirement, the process server company files with the FMCSA the form letting them know that you met that requirement. It's called the BOC-3, the blanket of coverage or blanket of companies, whichever words you want to use.
Question
Yes.
before you get too far and I forget. Let's say that this whole situation is real life and the driver, the carrier did what he was supposed to do and the load was rejected. What does the broker still has to pay the driver, right? I gotta stop. The carrier, right?
Correct, because it's a contract. The money is due because the carrier met their requirement of the broker carrier agreement. The broker carrier agreement says, I'm the broker. I'm going to pay you, Mr. Carrier, to pick this load up from the shipper and deliver it to the receiver. That's the broker carrier agreement. The carrier picked the load up from the shipper and delivered it to the receiver. It's not the carrier's fault that the load got rejected. The carrier did their job. No?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ding, 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 ding. Carrier did their job.
Okay.
So
So in that situation, the type of insurance, if I wanted to file as a broker to get that load covered because I made my mistake, would be not the contingent, but the E&O, right?
because
Okay.
you committed an error, not an omission, but you made an error by not informing the carrier that that load should have been tarped,
Okay.
right?
So what
Thank
happens to that? What happens to that load in the event if they rejected
Well,
the
the receiver is going to contact the shipper with whom they should have, because the receiver is supposed to have paid for the load because they purchased the load, but they're going to reject it because they didn't receive what they paid for, right? The shipper shipped a shipment to them, but it got damaged because it wasn't tarped. So the receiver says, "Well, I'm not paying for this; it's damaged. So take it back." So the shipper's going to say either get rid of it, Mr. Carrier, or tell the broker to tell the carrier to get rid of it, or have the carrier bring it back to the shipping facility. Carrier's going to say, I'm not bringing it back. You better pay me. I'm not bringing it back for free. So you got to send me another Raycon for me to take it from the receiver back to you, the shipper. So the carrier can make money both ways now in that scenario. Because it was not the carrier's fault that the load got rejected, even though the carrier transported the load. Technically, it wasn't their fault because it should have been told to them. Now, indirectly, you can say, yeah, come on, every carrier should have some common sense and just know that
you.
most flatbed loads should be tarped unless it's like steel or something, iron pipes or coils. But anyway, but if it's not on the Raycon, the contract between the broker and the carrier, technically, the carrier is not at fault because the Raycon is a broker document. It's not a carrier document, right? It is a broker document. Brokers produce the rate confirmation. They create that contract. So whatever verbiage is in that contract, you guys, you brokers, that's why you got a CYA. You got to cover yourself. You got to make sure. And how do you do that as a broker? You make sure that everything that the shipper, your customer tendered to you, their instructions, you make sure it's realized or documented in the rate con to cover yourself. Because again, that rate con is not a carrier document. It is a broker document. So that's the way the carrier can get out from under that. It's not my fault. So it's not my fault. So I'm not obligated, says the carrier, to bring it back from the receiver to the shipper. If you want me to, you got to send me another rate
A
confirmation.
new rate con. Yep.
Correct. You better pay me because that's fuel. I'm not burning this fuel for free. This ain't water, it's diesel. So, yes, sir, Mr. Ellis, you unmuted.
Yeah. So in a situation like that, so looking at having your bond, the contingent cargo coverage, and errors and omissions coverage. Now, why isn't the bond good enough in a situation like that? I mean, as you say, because if you have additional coverages, it obviously makes you look good, and like you said, you have skin in the game. But I mean, are there any loads out there that a carrier is going to be carrying that's going to eat up the entire $75,000 bond?
Of course there are. There are high value loads that but some customers will let the brokers know that there needs to be extra monies covering it because I got like multi-million dollar computer chips that go out to satellites in space and
Okay.
it's transported here.
Mhm.
Your carrier's insurance is not going to cover this. You need some contingent on top of that.
Right. No.
If you want me to tender this freight to you,
Right.
says the shipper to the broker.
Okay. So in the event, okay, so let's say for an error and omission, I mean, if you make an error, I mean, is it a $75,000 error?
It is whatever the value of the damage is.
Yes. Okay. Got you. Okay. So in other words, it could be more than the actual amount of your actual surety bond.
It could, but those cases are like anomalies in this
Yeah.
industry.
Highly unlikely.
Highly
Rare.
unlikely because if you're going to be transporting that large of a value of a commodity, then all sides are going to make sure everything is done to the letter.
Of course.
Like, like
Because
double
I was
check,
just
triple check.
because the reason I was asking is because I was saying, okay, so what would apply to any of these situations? Like, say, if you have all of these different coverages, so let's say you got them all,
Right.
and it can't. I mean, you can use any of them to cover the cost of an error, right? Or would you just go, okay, since it's an error in an omission situation, I'll just use that particular coverage for this situation, or would it even matter?
Now remember, if you get the supplemental coverages, there are certain values to that. Your
Mm-hmm.
error and omissions coverage can be up to $1 million.
Okay.
Your contingent cargo coverage can be up to $1 million. The reason I'm giving those low numbers because maybe brokerages can't afford that high amount. You may be able to, as a broker, only afford to get contingent cargo of another 100,000. You may only have the budget for that.
Mm-hmm.
The standard for contingent cargo is 250,000
Mm-hmm.
for most brokers. And then
Now, is that charged the same way our bond is charged? So you pay that annually, or is that a monthly fee?
negative. That's negative. It's there are other requirements that goes into the insurance piece than it does the bond piece. So a bond company qualifies brokers differently than insurance companies qualifies coverages for errors and omissions and contingent cargo and liability coverages. They're different apples and oranges.
Mhm.
Okay.
Do you have any examples of what that looks like? I mean, because I hear all of these things,
Right.
and these are the conversations we've had in the past. I didn't stockpile so much information, but sometimes you got to just see it so it all kind of makes more sense because
So
you hear it all the time.
the only example that I can produce is actually going to like let's say Progressive, State Farm, or Geico, any of those sites, looking up errors and omissions or contingent cargo policies and seeing what the requirements are for eligibility for that, or actually calling them and finding out. I know the bond company's requirements because they're in here.
Mhm.
To qualify for a bond, you can't. Well, let's go there first of all.
So we can go. Okay, so if I wanted to add this, I don't go to my bond company. I got
No,
to.
yeah,
Okay,
they're mutually exclusive.
got you,
Having a bond and getting the extra insurance coverages are two different things.
got you. Okay, that's right. Okay, just want to clear that up.
Yep, no problem. So, So we covered all the steps, right? And I know Mrs. Arnold, hopefully I didn't drift too far off of the basics of it, but are you okay over there?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, just making sure because you were here first.
Yes.
Yeah, so as a recap, application as far as broker requirements, fill out the application, pay the $300. You get your inactive MCL DOT number because you have to meet the other requirements. There's a 10-day protest for someone who want to protest whether or not you should be a broker. Okay. Then you got to get a bond. The bond protects the carrier. You got to get an agent of process, the BOC3. And also, I didn't mention there's another requirement too, something called the UCR, Unified Carrier Registration. It's not listed in this flow chart, but the UCR, the Unified Carrier Registration, is also a requirement that is filed by the UCR.gov. Once you get your inactive MCO DOT, you go your grant letter with the inactive MCO DOT, you go to the UCR.gov website and you enter that DOT in. Matter of fact, let's go there now. I don't have a DOT to put in there, but I'm just going to show you the site. UCR.gov, this site. And the first thing you would do, you would take that DOT that you received and put it right here. And then you would view and check the terms and conditions. You would view the privacy policy, check that, and then check you agree, hit submit, and it'll open up the UCR registration for you to fill out. Most brokers, if you are a non-asset based broker, even if you're asset-based brokerage, you will put the number of assets you have, assets meaning trucks and trailers. Trailers are also assets. Trucks, the tractors is an asset, the trailer is an asset. So if you got two flatbeds, right? Two flatbed truck and trailers, how many assets do you have? Four. Exactly. Ding, 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 ding. So you got one tractor and trailer, and you have another tractor and trailer. So that's one, two, three, four. So you have four assets. Does that, Mr. Ellis, you got a confused look on your face. I want to make sure you.
Well, I did have a question about the UCR registration because I actually I called the FMCSA because stuff kept popping. I kept getting these emails, and I was like, okay, and I covered one for 2025, but there was one up there for 2024, and I was like, well, wait a minute, my authority wasn't active yet. I mean, or hadn't had a bond on it yet, but they were still looking to, I don't know, do I have to still pay that?
You should not have to pay that. I would double check though.
Okay.
What month in 2024 did your brokerage?
October.
Okay, so it's kind of cutting it close there. Yeah. Did you call him? I would call him if I were you.
Um, I didn't actually. Who did I call? I think I talked to somebody at the FMCSA, but they did say give them a call. And I wasn't sure. They may have slipped my mind momentarily because I've been dealing with a bunch of other stuff with the credit union as far as the business account is concerned because they messed up my name and they had to amend it and I had to go through all that. This has been going on for weeks now, and I finally got it squared away as far as I know, as of last night. So yeah, I'll make sure I get that because I know I took care of 2025 because I was like, well, in fact,
Yeah,
right
just
there.
just I would circle back with them
Mm-hmm.
and just to verify because it may not be the calendar year that they require changes. It may be a fiscal year, and those run different. Like it may not be the traditional January to December, but it may be a June to July or something like that. So
Okay.
they want to look into that
Okay.
just to verify.
Then okay. And then okay. So yeah, I'll definitely do that because I know I took care of the 2025. I mean, I was kind of confused, a little lost on 2024. I was like, okay, if the authority wasn't my bond wasn't in yet, then what is that all about? But like I said, I'll give them a call because it did show up on the FMCSA, but for some reason they couldn't answer it.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm curious to know what you find out when you do call them, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, I'll let you know.
Yeah. I was trying to see what their process is. Now, I haven't spoken to UCR and the FMCSA regard in a while, so I haven't had the need recently. So, but yeah. But so the UCR is you have to list whether you're a broker or a motor carrier, because motor carriers also have are required to do a UCR registration, a unified carrier registration, obviously because they're carriers, unified carrier registration. That's where the name comes from. So they list their assets, and again, tractors and trailers are assets. So if you had three equipment types, and the equipment type is defined as a truck and a trailer. So if you had three equipment types, then you have six assets. The tractor is one asset, the trailer is another asset, and you got three of those. So three times two is six, right? So that's how that is done. Okay. So we've covered the basic requirements of applying for a broker authority. Now, there's other things you got to do too. And this circles back to Mrs. Arnold. Um, you got to also, put your documents together, your broker packets and things like. Have you looked at the module 3?
Yes, I started looking at it.
Okay. So yeah, the template's there. Because you could be doing this while you are waiting for your authority to become active. I would multitask, do two things at one time. That way you kind of save time and preserve time, honestly, while you're working on your broker, while you're working on your authority to become active, start building up your um, packet types. And remember, as freight brokers, we have two customers we deal with, or two people we deal with. We deal with the customer, which is the shipper, and we deal with the motor carrier, right? So we're the middlemen. We are the people who arrange that by definition. We arrange for the transportation of freight. Well, how do we do that? Well, we get the freight or procure it or contract it from the shipper, the customer. So that's one broker shipper contract, broker shipper agreement. And then we broker it or sell it, broker it, I guess, to the motor carrier. So that's the second contract, the broker carrier agreement, right? So here in module 3, we talk about, well, what are the contents of the broker shipper packet side and the broker carrier packet side? What are the minimum documents needed by you to send to a shipper and or a carrier? And we discussed that here in this particular module 3 and the basic ones. So the broker shipper side, of course, you're going to need the contract, the broker shipper agreement, right? The verbiage there. And this is just a template of what one looks like. It's not etched in stone, but it's a good starting point. Okay. That's the contract between you and the customer, the shipper, right? It's not the best one here, but it is one. Okay. And so this is the broker shipper packet. It contains the broker shipper agreement. It contains this is optional, but I would suggest putting it in here, a company profile of yourself. You want the shipper to know who you are, right? Just something general, nothing too big, like this: phone number, fax number, office, MC, EIN number, or federal ID, and people you contact. Just some general stuff, a company profile, brief paragraph, right? The third piece in the packet, you got the agreement between you and the shipper, and then you have your broker license. Remember I said on the broker authority, it says license. There it is right there. License. So if you send a shipper your broker license, do you also need to send them a copy of your BOC3?
Yeah,
Why?
that I don't know.
Does everybody else agree with Vancia that you should send your BOC3 to the shipper if you've already sent them a copy of your broker authority?
I
I
would
would
say
just
You
it
gave
should,
them a
because wouldn't
clue.
that
You
all be
just gave them a
inclusive?
clue because you
yeah.
said if you already done sent them, let me know you
Well,
don't have to.
let me rephrase it, then, Vancia. When you put together your broker shipper packet, should your broker shipper packet have both your broker authority license and your BOC3 in addition to other things?
No, because I mean, it's showing right here that you don't have it up there. You just have the MC number and the USDOT number.
Right. So to have this is how I will answer the question. To have a broker license implies that you have already gotten your
Yeah,
bond,
yeah.
you've already done your bond, your UCR, and your BOC3.
Right, because you can't have. I mean, because like I said, once you got the bond, I mean that you got to have everything else before you can even get the bond, though, too, right?
Well, you got to have everything else before you get the license. The actual broker license, the broker authority implies that you got to
Yeah,
have a
yeah,
bond.
for you.
Yeah,
Right.
you got to have the so
That's
to
what I
get the
meant. Sorry.
license, you got to have the bond, the UCR, the BOC3, those other requirements we just went over previously. So to send a broker license as well as a BOC3 is kind of an overkill. It'll be redundant, right? You don't need to send a BOC3 because the authority, the license says implies that you already have one.
Right.
Okay,
Right. To have a license implies that you already did the BOC3.
true.
Because if you didn't do the BOC3, you wouldn't have this in your packet. You wouldn't have a
Right.
license. If you didn't do the bond, you wouldn't have a license.
Yeah, you can't go active without it.
Right. If you didn't do the UCR, if you didn't do the BOC3, if you didn't do the actual application, you wouldn't have the license. The license
Mhm.
implies everything else was already done.
Right.
Okay. So the reason I say it like that is because some people, when they put together their broker shipper packet, they put everything in it. They put their license, they put a copy of their bond, their BMC 84, they put their BOC3. I'm like, what are you doing? That's too much information. You putting stuff, you're being redundant. And some shippers, they won't even read it. They'll put it in file 13. Everybody know what file 13 is, right? That's a
Mhm.
trash.
No.
That's a trash can.
Okay.
File 13. We call it file 13. The trash can.
Well, that's because if it's too much information on there, then they just decide to just get rid of it.
Right, right. I'm a customer. Listen. I'm a customer. I got a 50,000 square foot warehouse. I'm overseeing a 40-member staff. I'm managing multi-million dollars of freight. I do not have time to read a packet that's 10 pages long,
Right.
right or wrong. I don't have
Well,
time for that.
now ideally, it should be what, a page or two at the most.
If you could put all these documents in one PDF, and I would say no more than about 3 pages, maybe four at the most, because you got to have the actual broker shipper agreement, your authority. You do need to have, if you have extra insurance, then you put that in there, the supplemental insurance, the errors and omissions contingent cargo, your W-9 as a broker showing that you are a business with an EIN number. And then, of course, if you use factoring as a broker, then you need the factoring company's credit application and the factoring company's notice of assignment between you and that factoring company. That's what the notice of assignment is.
And how do we get all of that made up, though?
Well, let's start with number six. To get number six made up, you just contact the factory company that you are in contract with
Okay.
and say, hey, Seven Oaks, or hey, TBS, or hey, Foley's, or any factory company. Uh, or if you got a relationship with them where you can go to their website, into their portal, and you can download a blank credit application and download your copy of the notice of assignment between you and that factoring company. Most factoring companies operate like that. They'll give you access to their portal since you are their client,
Right.
and you can go in there and access the right documents. Just like insurance companies, right? If you got State Farm or Progressive, you can go into your State Farm portal and create yourself a new certificate of insurance listing somebody as a certificate holder. I've done it with Next Insurance and LaDonna, by the way. I still use Next to this day. Um, so yeah, you can go in there to the portal and do that. So that's number six. Number five, W-9, you can just go to Google and type in W-9 and print out a blank W-9 form, fill it out, and that'll be right there. Turn that in.
Okay.
Certificate of insurance, your insurance company, if you got the extra supplemental insurance like CCI and E&O, You go to statefarm.com, progressive.com, go to certificate of insurance link, print out a copy of it. It'll have all your information on it. So that's how you do that. Okay. So that's the broker shipper packet. Okay, those are things you need to get to the shipper representing you. Now, next is the broker carrier packet because remember, you are in a relationship with the carrier too because they are the ones who are going to be transporting your customers' shipment, freight, right?
Right.
So, the first thing, just like the broker shipper agreement, now you got a broker carrier agreement. This is a document that you create for the carrier now, right? And this is a standardized one, what it looks like. It basically says what is your relationship and responsibilities as a broker, and what do you require of the carrier in this agreement? And if you guys come to terms on that, everybody signs and prints in their respective locations. Okay. Talks about things like insurance, late payments, no back solicitation, double brokering, and all this other stuff. Right. The verbiage, read through when you get time, read through the verbiage. As you read, this one is 8 pages. As you read, if you have any questions, you bring them up in the next class and we'll go into detail about that so that you can have even more clarity. Okay. But the broker carrier agreement is now on the carrier side. Now, this is in the broker carrier packet. The carrier profile, you create this because you want to know about who's going to be the driving this, who's the truck driver, what's their truck number, what's their trailer number, do they have a dispatcher, what's their information? All of that is in number 2, the carrier profile. And this is information you get from the carrier, so you can have on file for them as you broker and dispatch them under your shippers shipments, loads. Okay. So we got number 1, the broker carrier agreement. Number 2, the carrier profile. And then now you, the broker, require from the carrier that you're going to be having them move the loads, you require copies. What freight brokers need copies of from the carrier. So every broker, when you are onboarding and approving a carrier, truck driver, owner operator for your brokerage, you need a copy of their carrier authority. Yes or no? So remember I said the broker license is for the broker. For the motor carriers, their authority says certificate, and it says it right there, certificate. That's how you can tell the difference of the types of authorities. A broker's authority says license. A motor carrier's authority says certificate. There's the difference right there in plain English. That's how you distinguish between the two. Okay. So you need a copy of their operating authority. As a broker, obviously, you're not giving your customers, shippers, freight to a motor carrier who cannot provide you a copy of their authority. Yes or no? Correct. You're not. Why would you
No.
number one, you can't. That's illegal. They can't transport freight without having the authority to do so. So any motor carrier who cannot provide you an authority certificate, you shouldn't onboard them. That's common sense, right? Why would I give you freight that you don't have the authority to move and pay you for it? Are you serious? So then number 4, you want to require every carrier to give you a copy of their certificate of insurance. So in addition to them having the authority to carry your customer's freight, they need to have the certificate showing that they have the proper insurance coverage to cover what they have the authority to carry. Yes or no? Okay. Am I making sense? Hopefully I'm making sense.
Yes.
Okay. And this is a copy of a certificate of insurance. Okay. Just a blank copy. Next, you need a copy of their W-9 showing that they are a business. They have an EIN, which implies that they started the company, came up with a business name, created it, got a business license, and they have an EIN to show it. That's attached to their company, an EIN number. And the W-9 shows that. You're not giving freight, you're not giving your customers freight to a company that, or to a carrier who doesn't have a business, doesn't have an EIN number for tax purposes. You're setting yourself up for failure. And number one. Number two, it's illegal. So, and then lastly, just like Mr. Ellis saw, just like, or Miss, I think it was Vancia, just like on the broker shipper side, on the broker carrier side, you want to, if your carrier that you're brokering to works with a factoring company, then that carrier's going to send you, the broker, their factoring company's credit application and their factoring company's notice of assignment. Why? Their factoring company's credit application is used to vet and qualify you, the broker. That's the purpose. And then their factoring company's notice of assignment is telling you, the broker, that, hey, all invoices that are payable to this carrier, says the factoring company, are now payable to us, the factoring company. The carrier is the client. There's an echo. Somebody came in. Okay, there we go. So, does everybody understand that part?
Mhm.
All right. I actually went over the time that I said I was going to do, but that's fine. Any questions here? Now, all you guys have to do is just see the example, see the templates, and just create your documents according to what we have here. Now, with the broker shipper agreement and the broker carrier agreement, there are also Word versions of those. You can download them to your local machine, open them up, and change the verbiage of what we have to match your company information. Okay. So we made that part easy for you as well. On the carrier side, where it says what freight broker needs copies of from the carrier, you do not have to create any of these. The carrier is going to send you copies of theirs. That's why it says you need copies from the carrier. On the broker carrier side, the only thing you need to create is your profile for your carrier if you so choose. And of course, your broker carrier agreement. On the broker, I see the confused look on your face. What's going on, Miss Arnold?
Oh no, I'm just processing it.
Okay. On the broker shipper side, you, of course, create from the Word document your broker shipper agreement. Create number two, your profile based off of this template, or you can have your own. You will not need to create a broker authority because you're going to have one. You're going to receive one from the FMCSA once it becomes active, once you meet all the requirements, the bond, the UCR, BOC3, blah, blah, blah. So you don't need to create anything. You're going to get a copy of that from the FMCSA. It's going to either be mailed or emailed to you. And then the certificate of insurance, you don't need to create that. You're going to get a copy of that from your insurance company. Your W-9, you're going to print that out. And then if you work with factoring, you could easily print out your factoring company's credit application and notice of assignment. So you don't have to create those things. The only thing that you have to create is the actual profile if you so choose to use it, number two. And number one is the main one, the actual broker shipper agreement from the Word version. Okay. So just condensing everything, making it easier for you, what you need to create and what you don't have to create, what you only need copies of from the carrier. Okay. So it's getting a little easier. Right? So, okay. Any questions here? I know people on YouTube are going to see this like, man, this is that easy to create the documents and do all this stuff. Well, you just gotta, it is what it is. So let's go to the main menu. See if there are any other questions. I like the layout of your office, Vancy. Are you looking all professional, everything over there? Where you go? Where you get your stuff from IKEA? I can't hear you. You're muted. You're muted.
I said, I wish. No, this is just stuff I like that I got. Though honestly, let me tell you about these. I got three of these. Can you see them?
Yes, ma'am.
File cabinets, the tall file cabinets.
Right.
You can't see the little ones. I got two right here. One for my tax company and one for my logistics. But these were when I was living in Duncanville, Texas. These were sitting outside, thrown in trash. Three of them. I pulled up, I knocked on the door because they wasn't moving. They lived there. And I asked them, I said, can I get those file cabinets? They said, yep. I threw them on the back of my truck one by one. They was right around the corner from my house.
Say, free is always good.
Yes.
Um,
Thank you, though.
yeah, of course. So let's see, module 1, 2, 3, and then modules 4 and 5. So module 4 is two parts: who are the shippers and how to get them. And then module 5 is how to get the carriers. And then module 6 is a load move. So it's a progression from a basics perspective. You start off with what's pre-required, what's required, what documents do you need to create your packets, and then now let's go after the people we need to deal with. Let's go after the shippers. Well, let's first define who they are, and then how do we get them? What are some of the methods? And then the carriers. Well, once we get a shipper, let's see how we can get a carrier to move that shipper's freight or their shipments. And then let's go through the load movement process. What does that mean, the load movement process? Well, once you get a shipper and a carrier, you have to move the load. You have to tender the freight, as they call it, either through a TMS system or through a process called EDI, electronic data interchange, or manually, where you can take a tender and build a rate confirmation manually or through an automatic electronic process. There are two different ways, right? So, well, I can't say right because you guys don't. If you've never brokered a load, then you wouldn't know, obviously, right? So, but yeah, that's the concept. So, and what all is involved? What are the little things? Check calls, accessorials, all these other things, and we'll cover all that as well as we progress through the training. But we want to do an overview first of a high level overview of what are the major requirements, and then we'll get into the meat and get very specific and granular. Because as you progress and get towards the end of the 90 days, you're going to need everything to efficiently broker, right? And then we have our supplemental materials to help you along the way, this middle column, our docs, our tools, and our resources. Broker documents. I mean, there's a ton of stuff in here. TMS systems example, tools and resources and broker documents are very helpful. Broker documents. Instead of saying that they're helpful, let's look at them real quick, right? As a matter of fact, I always say this. I've got so much stuff in here, I literally forgot what's back here. That's how much stuff is back here. But it's beneficial, right? Freight broker email scripts, shipper scripts, cold call scripts. Come on, right? Freight broker sales strategies, freight broker one-on-one qualifying questions. These are qualifying questions that you would ask a potential customer, a shipper, right? How to handle rejections, all these different things. If you're good at sales, um, you probably have an easier time. If you worked in a call center or a customer service, if you were a CSR, customer service rep, you worked at a call center like Geico or Verizon or, a call center, you go into a call queue, you take the next call, you look at this queue, there's 1,000 calls, you got to take the next queue in the order, and you get somebody who's a difficult person. So you deal with various personalities in the call center and customer service. It's the same thing with the shippers. Not as belligerent, but it's the same thing, right? You're dealing with personality. So you have to have that versatility. You have to be versatile enough to be able, and you have to have thick skin, right? Because you're going to get a lot of rejections. You're going to get a lot of no's before you get that first yes. All right. If I would have told you otherwise, I would have lied to you. And that's one thing I'm not going to do. You're going to get a lot of no's before you get that yes. So, but I love the no's because it gives me an experience and makes me better on the next call. I learned something from the last no, so when I get the next no, I'm inching closer to that yes because I've experienced all these no's and I've learned from those experiences. So, okay. But yeah, just peruse this stuff, right? Oh, what's a BOL? Rate confirmations. So a BOL is a bill of lading. It's the manifest of the goods. So when you broker freight and you tell the shipper that you found a truck for their load to pick up at the shipping facility, the shipper is going to send or create a BOL, a bill of lading. There are different types. We won't get into that straight BOLs because we won't get into all that stuff. But the BOL is the manifest of the goods. You know, who holds title to the goods at that moment? The BOL, bill of lading, LADING. Okay, title to the goods. Right now, the shipper holds the title to the goods because it's at their facility. Once the truck driver gets loaded and the shipper signs off the goods to the truck and sends them on their way, the truck driver has temporary ownership of that freight until it gets to the receiver, and the receiver signs the BOL, taking ownership of the goods at the receiver. That BOL then turns into a POD, proof of delivery, because it got delivered. And here's the BOL, the signed BOL showing so. So we'll get into all that stuff too. The order and the process of tendering freight. Different rate confirmations. Um, so it's just information. Here's one LaDonna sent me. I forgot there's her name right there. Yeah, she did a load. So we got experienced people in the class. So here's a blank rate confirmation. Sometimes you'll see it instead of called rate confirmation, it'll be called load confirmation or shipment confirmation. It's the same thing. Okay. So, but you're in the right place. Don't worry. Don't fret. Everything's good. No broker, like no child left behind, no broker left behind. Trust me on that. So, Mr. Ellis, you're unmuted.
Yeah. Because again, it seems like I always catch a few things, and it seems like in terms of order in which things should be operating. Because what I'm doing now, like I said, I'm calling all these people, but I don't even have all of that in place.
So we need to create for you.
Shouldn't all of that be in place before you make one phone call? Because let's just by chance, let's say you luck up and within your first 2 to 3 calls, you manage to book something, but all of these things aren't in order.
Well, these things right here are supplemental documents and things that can help you. But if you were to call me, I'm a shipper, and we had the conversation, and I was convinced that you were able to tender freight for me because you told me you could and you had capacity and you had trucks in my area. That's the most standard statement a broker tells a shipper. Hey, we got trucks over here every day coming out of your area, going to your lane, what are your hardest lanes? How can we help you? Blah, 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 right? Some of the basic stuff that they'll tell them. Oh, you do? Okay, well, let me put this to the test. I got 10 shipments going out tomorrow. Can you help me? And you'd be like, uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want that to happen.
Just call me. 10 shipments is nothing. Just call me.
But I just said, but it's again, it's not. I ain't got no problem talking to people. There ain't no issue. It's just like I said. It's always that some of that follow up stuff that you get thrown like a curveball here and there, and just not necessarily knowing how to respond to it right away, to where it doesn't seem like it's a new thing for you. It's just you want to obviously sound as experienced as possible, even if you're not. But just knowing how to respond to certain things, something that you may not necessarily expect, because everything ain't gonna always go according to how it's generally laid out.
And I agree 100%. So if you talk to me, the shipper, and I say, hey man, I'm gonna send you a load tender for $3,000. Can you move this? Can you move this shipment in this lane from Norfolk, Virginia down to Atlanta? And you'll say, sure. So I send you the load tender. Now, on the tenders, you have to accept or reject it. Just because I send you a tender doesn't mean you have to move the load. It's not until you accept it.
Right. No, I understand that part.
Right.
But again, it's just knowing.
So past that point, what would you do once you send the tender back to me, and I send it back to you with with my signature on it, and we have a contract now? What would be your what do you think should be your next steps?
Well, I gotta, read through it, make sure I understand all the details and everything else, and then decide whether or not it's something I want to go through with.
Let's say you accepted it and you agreed to all the details were there. You accepted a tender. It was a decent rate where you had enough room, enough wiggle room, or enough profit margin to make money. All
Uh-huh.
all the stars aligned. You accepted it. Now, what would you do next? And I'm not putting you on the spot. I'm just asking
No,
us.
no, no, no. I'm trying to make sure I understand the question. I'm not exactly sure what you're asking as far as what I do next. Because
Okay,
if I accepted it, I accepted it.
right. So you got to find a truck.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's a part of it. Yeah. If I accepted
Right.
something, yeah, that's the next step is to find the truck.
You got to find a truck. So
Uh,
if you are a new broker, you don't have a network of trucks already. Your only other option is to put it on the load board.
Vote on the load board. Right.
Right, if you're a broker, you got to post it on a load board. Now, this is assuming that all your other stuff has already been met because if you got a shipper, that means you've already created your broker carrier agreement, your broker shipper agreement, all the documents in the back office and
Yeah,
everything.
and
You've already
that's
done.
what I need. That's what I need. I need all those agreements. I need all those forms, all those documents.
Right.
So
So
like I said, once I got that, the rest is easy. I can just
yeah,
call people to
if you
turn.
got a shipper, it's assumed that all your other documents has already been created because you sent it to the shipper and they
Mhm.
accepted it and they sent you a load. That's the reason why they sent you a load tender. They
Right.
agreed with the contract and they said, okay, they verified you, they vetted you, they seen your authority, they seen everything else, and they vetted you and they said, okay, I like what I see. Let me show you, let me give you a shot. Let me send you a load tender. So it's implied that everything else has already been met. You've already did all the documentation as far as your broker shipper agreement, all of the, the authority.
Right.
Right.
So the answer to your question is yes. You you should already have your processes and documents in place while before you start making those calls. You want to make sure you understand the process and you have your correct documents ready because you can't you they're not going to wait for you to forever to create your documents to seal the
Right.
deal.
Right.
So,
So you
and
said
once, and
process.
then you had a two-part question. Wait a minute, please. You had a two-part question. You said, what do you say next when you get to a certain point? Because we're throwing out different procedures to you. Once you understand the principles and the processes, you're going to be able to combine that with whatever skill you have, your customer service skill, your sales skill, and you're going to be able to combine it if you were very good at those skills, and you will know instantly what else to say. You're going to learn. You're going to be confident because you're going to do the modules and you're going to do your paperwork and do your reading and your research and understand the process. And you're going to sound confident as you go through the steps of learning what it is to do as you go through this class. When you're talking to a shipper, you definitely don't want to sound new.
I'll say this too. I'm gonna make it easier for everybody. I would not begin the process of going after a customer to try to broker freight until I have my company created, right? My LLC, EIN, name of my company, until I have all my documents I need, either on the broker side, broker shipper side, and the broker carrier side. I want to have both of them created because just because I get a shipper, I don't have a carrier yet, but I still want to have the documents beforehand. Because when I do get a carrier, I need to send them the documents. So it makes sense to have them created prior to. So I wouldn't go after a shipper until I have my company created, till I have my bond, till I have all my documents created, everything in place, and then my last step is to go after the customer. Then once I get the customer, everything's already in place, I decide whether or not I want to tender that shipment that they sent to me, either accept it or reject it. Once I accept it, because I decided, well, I got enough room for a profit margin, I will accept it because I can make money. Now I got to find a carrier. Okay. So we're past all the paperwork at this point, we're getting ready to do the work. Now we got to move that shipper's load, right? So shipper's waiting on us, right? We got a 20% margin. They give us a $3,000 load tender. We stand to make $600. We find a carrier. We don't have we're new brokers, right? So we don't have carriers in our network of brokerages because we haven't onboarded any carriers yet. This is day one, right? So the only other option is the load board. So we posted on we first of all we look on a load board and see what that shipper's lane is paying on the load. What's the market? What's the spot market for that already? Let's say it's paying, I don't know, 1,900. You got 2,400 after your $600 profit margin. You got $2,400 left to give to a truck, but the lane is saying 1,900. So you got an extra $500 spread right there between 1,900 and 24, right?
Okay, so I'm new. You're saying look at the lane. We probably out of time, so this is the wrong question to ask. I started it though, but I'm saying you're saying to look at the lane. What does that mean? What does that consist of? What are the steps?
Great question. So I'm going back to the whiteboard because I can better show you in a form of an illustration. That's a great question, Marcia, by the way. I can't stand you. No. um, let me erase this. And so we're past the point of our creating our company, getting our bonds, getting our broker license. So that implies bond and everything else. Creating our documents. We're past that point. We've had a conversation with the shipper, right? We already got our broker shipper packet, broker carrier packet. Everything's already created. We had a conversation. So that should be done prior to talking to, well, I'm gonna say it like this. Does everybody agree to that with that part at least? Everything should be done prior to you picking up the phone calling the shipper. You should have your brokers created, your bond, all your documentation created, everything in place. It just looks more efficient and professional, correct? I w-
Yes.
I wouldn't talk to a shipper and not have any documentation to send them. That would be very unprofessional. Number one. And then number two, they're not going to work with you, right? So have everything in place. So now, Vonsi made a great point. So let's get to the illustration here. So we got a load tender. Shipper sent us a load tender, $3,000. I'm gonna put 3K, $3,000. Well, let me erase that real quick. $3,000. Your profit margin, let's say you're a new broker, you charge anywhere between, for new brokers, this is the standard, between 15 and 20% margin. Profit. When I say margin, I'm meaning profit margin, what you stand to make. Okay. Um, so let's say it's 20%. So if it's 20%, 20% of 3,000 is 600. 3 times 2 is 6. Everybody agree with that, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'll make sure I don't leave anybody behind. Load tender. Shippers send load tenders. Freight brokers create rate confirmations. All right, remember that. Shippers send to brokers or trucking companies, by the way. I need to say that. Shippers work either directly with trucking companies or with freight brokers. In this example, they are working with us, the freight broker. So shippers send load tender to the broker. All right. Broker takes the tender, take out their profit margin, and then create the rate confirmation for the carrier, right? Or load confirmation or shipment confirmation or whatever you want to call it. The difference between 600 and 3,000 is 2,400. Okay. This is how much money they have in after they take out their profit margin, 2,400. Now, will they put all of that on the load board? If the lane dictates it being less, then of course not. Because they want to start, you want to make some extra money also, in addition to your original profit margin off the top. If you got enough room to make some more money, because a lane for your shipper may be less than that. So let's say the lane Vonsi brought that point of the lane. The lane for this shipper, let's say it's Norfolk, Virginia, and a lane, all a lane is picking up from a shipper location, delivering to a receiving location. That's what a lane is. From point to point, A to B. It could be a straight through, a one and one. It could be multiple stops, multiple pickup, multiple stops. Okay. Just so you understand what the lane is. Let me spell that out. Lane, lane. Okay. Norfolk to ATL. All right. With me so far? Vonsi asked a great question. Well, how do you know what the spot market, a spot market is what brokers pay to the truck, what the rate that the broker pays to a truck. That's called a spot market rate. The spot, or let's call it the spot rate for short. What's the spot rate for this lane? In other words, on average, what do brokers average or normally pay a truck that's running from Norfolk to Atlanta, which is the same lane of your newly acquired shipper? You guys with me so far?
Mhm.
Okay. So you would go to a load board and do a comparative analysis of that. You would go to any load board, that truck stop, uh, 123, and you will look up that lane and see what other brokers are paying to the truck. Let's say we did that and that number was 1900. Okay. Well, that's the average. So every truck is going to move it for at least 1900. Anything below it, a truck driver say, "Well, I'm not moving. It's not even at the average for that lane, which is 1900, right?" You got 24 to play with, right? Even after taking out your $600 profit margin. You see what I'm talking about now? So now, if you want to motivate a trucker to take it, I would add an extra, maybe one, 200 extra dollars on top of the 1900. I would take it from my 24 that I have left over after I take out my 600 from the 3000. I would take I would take out 200 from that. So this will become 22, right? And I would add it to here so that it become 21. So I would post it for 2100. See what I just did? Right? Everybody with me so far?
Yeah. Now, I actually heard something from one of the ladies over at a truck stop where she said you whatever it's posted for as the broker, you would add your percentage on top of it. But from what you're saying, it's going to
That's
be
when
whatever.
what she's saying is that's when you're looking to quote a lane to a shipper and try to win that tender. That's what she means by it. So if you were trying to win if a shipper said, "Hey, I need you to bid on the lane so I can see if I can send you a tender so we can work together," and you say, "Okay, well, I'm gonna send you my email. You send me the lane, the details, the weight, the equipment type it goes on." They'll say, "Okay, it's coming out of Norfolk going to Atlanta." So you'll go on the load board and you'll look it up and it says, "Okay, it's 1900." And you'll say, "Well, your profit margin is 20%." So you'll put 20% on top of that, and then whatever that number is, you will add it to it and you'll quote it back to the shipper. So what you said, we're going in reverse when we're trying to get to a shipper's lane. I mean, get to a shipper's tender. That's how you would do that. Okay. But this one right here, we're trying to get a truck to move it. We're past the point of getting a tender. So we want to get the truck to move. So if I post it, it's on average posted at 1900. But
Gotcha.
if I post it for 21 or
Right.
2200,
Yeah.
guess what's going to happen? I'm
Yeah.
going to get inundated with phone calls
Yeah. I'm saying, yeah, they'll be calling.
because it's $300 above the 1900, right?
Right.
19. So let's say somebody moved it for 2200. I had 24 in it. So after I paid them 22, there's an extra $200 laying around. So that could be added to the initial 600. So now I profited 800. See?
Right. Okay.
That's just one scenario. There are other worst case scenarios where um the lane is well below the average and you had to pull more and you got to put more into it what's going to dip into your original profit margin, your 600. Some brokers will do that too.
Yeah.
Let's say you had to add an extra $300 from your initial profit margin in order to get that lane move or get that load move. Would you be willing to do that? You're still making three instead of making
Right.
600, you're making 300 for that shipment.
Right. And I mean, you base that on how many loads you moving per day, per week, or whatever the case may be.
It's called volume. That's correct.
Volume.
So let's say the customer gives you 10 loads a week to do. And you say, well, I'm making my profit margin dictates that I get 600 for it, but you discover that lane, you got to take an extra $300 out of that in order to get a truck motivated to move it. So still, instead of making 6,000 a week, you're going to make 3,000 a week because if you do that, if your profit margin is only 300, but you're moving 10 loads, that's 3,000 a week. I can live off of 3,000 a week.
Yeah.
I think most of us can live off of 3,000.
Yeah.
Now, I could, of course, 6,000 a week sounds a lot better, but if I want to make volume and keep the shipper happy and keep the truck, so as a broker, you got to satisfy both sides. You got to
Right.
keep the shipper happy by moving their freight, and you got to keep the carrier happy by paying them a fair wage in order to stay motivated to move the freight.
Now, with this, in this case, this little scenario right here that you just laid out, is this, would you base this strictly on the fact that you have a network of trucks, or this is something that you would just post on a load board? This can go either way.
This is the worst case scenario where you're new, you don't have a network of trucks, you posted on a load board to begin building a network of trucks.
Got you.
Right. This is the worst case scenario. Now, if you had, as a broker, if you already have a network of truck, let's say you got a network of 50 trucks out there that you've already got under your authority. All these 50 owner operators, they've already moved loads for you in the past. So they're in your system, your brokerage as owner operators that you've already onboarded.
Right.
You get this new shipper. The first thing you're going to do is reach out to your network first before you
Right.
post it on a load board. That saves
Of
you
course.
time for posting it
Right.
on a load board.
Of course. Absolutely.
There you go. Does everybody understand what I just said there? Right? You want to go to your network first. You want to have your buddies eat first, the ones who,
Right.
and it makes your job easy because
Yes.
they're already set up with you. You don't have to go through the onboarding process of getting all their information, their certificate of insurance, all that other crap, because you've already done that with them. They're in your network. All you got to do is send them the rate con that if they agree to the numbers, as opposed to being new, going after new carriers, and you got to go through that whole process of onboarding them, vetting them, factoring, all this other stuff, right? So you see the advantage of having a network of carriers as opposed to being new. So there's a lot of things to factor in as a broker you got to consider, and it comes with experience, and also obviously more importantly, it comes with time, right? So I mean, we talked ourselves into 2 hours. Uh-oh. Well, that's my limit, I guess. Street lights is on. It's my bedtime. But yeah. Any questions? I mean, was this example okay to kind of bring home the point?
Yep. Well,
Yes.
I
Okay.
got a understanding.
You
Still
guys
have
are gonna
some
be
questions.
you guys are gonna be I'm gonna give you some truism right now. I'm gonna give you some truism. You guys are gonna be very good brokers because some of the better brokers out there now, what we're going over right now, don't even know this.
And then one last thing. Well, I've talked. I mean, the
Go ahead.
email I sent you. Did you get a chance to look at that at all?
Say again.
Did you get a chance to look at the email I sent you
I'm
about
going to
that
look at it
summit?
I'm going to look at it in the morning. What you sent me about the broker carrier that summit that you sent me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll look at it in the morning and I'll reply to it.
Okay.
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 Yeah. But yeah, a lot of brokers out there now they've gotten their experience by bumping their heads a lot, and they're coming to the understanding of how to do it correctly. But it took a long time and it took a lot of mistakes to do that. You guys are getting firsthand of how it should be done and how you should carry yourself as a broker, right? And all the things that you need to keep in mind when you're brokering, when you are arranging for the transportation of freight, right? So um, it's beneficial, it's helpful. And then you're part of a team and a network and a family of like-minded individuals. who want to do the same thing, want to see everybody successful. So that's always a good thing. No ill intent, no ill feelings of one another. Um, so, but are there any final questions before we get off? I'm gonna erase all this stuff. I don't want to have it in the back end.
I just have a quick question for you, Charles. Um, I'm a former student of yours, dispatching back probably about 2 to 3 years ago, and I've
I
just
thought I recognized the name.
so I found the website. It's a long story, but anyway, I was able to locate the website again, and I stumbled upon the brokers training. I didn't see anything for dispatchers, but I'm trying to get my foot back in and get back in the swing of things. Um, your email still the same, or I can still reach out to you because I just had a couple questions about like I said, I was a dispatcher student. I didn't do broker, but that was, something that I was eventually going to get into. But I don't want to hold the class up, but I just wanted to know if I could just send you over an email and just ask a couple questions.
Certainly, certainly. The email is, I don't know if you remember the email, but it's still Exodus Logistics LLC at yahoo.com.
Okay. Okay.
I'll type that in here. Um, and then I'm looking at the website now. You said you couldn't find the dispatcher site?
Not, I mean, I saw the information, but I didn't see where you know how we would have the meetings like how you're doing with the brokers right now. I didn't see a schedule and a Zoom meeting for that, so that's why I hopped in on this one.
Okay, so let's go to the home page of the website. Can you see the screen on the home page?
Yeah.
Okay, so up here, do that. See what says merch, services, then dispatcher 101 and freight broker 101.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two. So under
Mm-hmm.
dispatcher 101, we have a Zoom calendar right here. So if you click that, it takes you to the same schedule like on the broker side, but for the dispatchers.
How did I miss that? Because I looked up and down. I'm like, I don't see it. Okay.
Yep.
There it is. Okay.
And then you come in. So
Awesome.
coincidentally, we're having one tomorrow at 6 because tomorrow's the 12th. 6
Okay. I'll
p.m.
more than likely be in that one then. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Since you
right.
said you're
But
a
I'll send
former,
you over an email as well.
okay, you said you're a former student, so I'm assuming you don't have access no longer to the main menu portal.
I haven't even tried to be honest with you. I mean, it hasn't been that long ago. I mean, I think it was 20, well, yeah, it's been a while. 23, 22, 23 was the last time I probably logged in, but I haven't even attempted to try getting back in.
Okay, but so this is
So I'm pretty sure
yeah, this is the
once I locate my information, I can try it.
yeah, this is the new improved back office area.
Yeah, I see.
And that building in the background is the Exodus Logistics Learning Center.
Okay.
And
I
there's
think the last time you were in the process of getting all of that. I think you were looking at buildings back then, the last time I was coming to class.
yeah, this is the Learning Center now. This is the building. There's my truck right there, my with my logo on the side down in the parked in the front. But yeah, yep, that's it. And
Awesome. Congratulations.
thank you. So, and we're working on other things. So, but yeah, just send me an email. I'll answer any questions. Um,
Okay.
are you trying to get back into the dispatcher training, or are you trying to get to the broker side?
I'm really wanting to get into the brokering side. I ran across a old classmate that's been running trucks for a couple years, and he just ventured off to get his license, and he's in the process of getting all that started up. And he reached out to me like, can we work together and so on and so forth. I'm like, shoot, I know somebody that I was taking training from, so let me reach out and get back in the swing of things. So yeah,
Okay, very good. Well, welcome back.
thank you.
All
Glad to be
right.
back.
All righty. So with that, let's see. Our next class for the broker side will be this Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Okay,
And
perfect.
then for the dispatchers, for those who are in dispatching, but that'll be tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern. So until then, I will see you guys then Friday night. And then come with your questions. All right.
All right, thank you.
Have a good one.